Peter was the kind of boy who always seemed a step ahead of the moment he lived in. There was something restless in the way he moved, his fingers drumming on desks, his eyes wandering out windows, his heart already chasing tomorrows that hadn't yet arrived. He was bright, quick to laugh, and quicker to sigh. Beneath that sparkle of energy was a quiet ache on impatience that clung to him like a shadow he couldn't shake. At school, while other children focused on arithmetic or copied neat lines from the blackboard, Peter's mind wandered to faraway places where bells rang sooner. Days moved faster, and he was already someone important. His teacher's voice would cut through his thoughts like chalk scraping across slate. "Peter, are you with us?" "Yes, miss," he would mutter, blinking back to the room. "Then pay attention, please." "I'm sorry, miss," he'd reply softly, his gaze sliding back toward the open window where sunlight fell across the grass. But he wasn't sorry, not really. What he wanted couldn't be found in that classroom. He wanted to arrive wherever that meant. When winter came, he longed for spring. When the flowers finally bloomed, he missed the hush of snow. Happiness was always a season away, an invisible prize hiding just beyond reach. His mother used to smile and say, "Patience, my dear. You can't rush a sunrise." But Peter would just nod and think to himself, "I don't want to wait for it. I just want it to be morning already." One golden afternoon after school, the boy found himself wandering farther than usual. The path wound through whispering trees and patches of wild moss that sparkled beneath beams of sunlight. He had no goal, only a quiet need to be somewhere else. After a while, tired and flushed, he lay down upon the mossy ground. The forest murmured with rustling leaves, and the air smelled of earth and rain yet to fall. He felt the heaviness of stillness, and for the first time that day, Peter closed his eyes. It was then that a voice, clear yet soft as the wind, spoke his name. "Peter." He jolted upright. "Who's there?" "Peter," the voice said again, gentle but firm. "Don't be afraid." He looked around. The forest was empty, but the light shimmered oddly between the trees. Then, from the shadows, stepped a woman unlike anyone he'd ever seen. Her hair glowed faintly like moonlight, her robes shimmered like rippling water. And her eyes held both kindness and warning. How do you know my name?" Peter whispered. "That doesn't matter," she said, her voice echoing like distant bells. "What matters is what you seek." "I don't understand." "Oh, you do," she replied with a faint smile. "You are impatient. You wish to move faster through your days, do you not?" Peter blinked, his heart raced. "I suppose I do." She reached into her robes and drew out something small and gleaming, a silver ball wound tightly with a fine glowing thread. "This," she said, holding it out, "is your life's thread. Every moment you live lies upon it. If you pull it, time will move forward. A day, a month, a year gone in the blink of an eye. But listen well, child. Once pulled, it cannot be put back." Peter's breath caught. "So? I can skip the boring parts. The long classes, the chores, the waiting." "Peter." "Yes," she said, "but every gift has its cost." The silver glow reflected in his wide eyes. He reached out a trembling hand. "May I have it?" She studied him for a long moment, and then, slowly, she placed the ball in his palm. It felt cool and alive, humming faintly like a heartbeat. "Use it wisely, Peter," she said softly. "Do not let your impatience steal the beauty from your days." "I'll be careful," he promised, though his voice betrayed a thrill that outshone his caution. And with that, the woman smiled faintly and faded into the woods until only the whisper of leaves remained. The next day at school, Peter's fidgeting returned with renewed force. The minutes crawled slower than ever, the clock hands mocking him from across the room. He slipped his hand into his pocket and felt the smooth, silver surface of the magic ball. What harm could a tiny pull do, he thought. Just a second or two. Just until the bell rings. He tugged. In an instant, the world spun like a whirlpool. Voices blurred, colors stretched, and the air itself seemed to fold. Then, "All right, children," his teacher was saying. "Pack your things. School's over." Peter blinked. He was still sitting in his seat, but the day was done. He could hardly breathe. It worked. He ran out into the sunlight, laughing. It really worked. From that moment, Peter used the thread whenever the world felt slow. When chores piled up, he pulled it. When his mother asked him to help with errands, he pulled it again. When lessons dragged on, or storms trapped him indoors, or the days felt too dull, he'd give the thread another gentle tug. Weeks collapsed into days. Months vanished like mist. He skipped the tedious, the tiring, the ordinary, and, every time, he felt lighter, freer, unstoppable. Years later, Peter was no longer a boy but a young man apprenticed to a craftsman in town. The work was long and often dull, but he had a secret no one knew. Whenever boredom crept in, he pulled the thread just a little and the weeks of sanding, measuring, and sweating disappeared in a blink. He grew taller, stronger, and cleverer but also strangely hollow inside. The world seemed to pass in flashes. Then came Lisa. She was different, gentle, yet steady, her laughter calm where his was hurried. Peter felt something shift in his chest when she spoke. She made time feel slower, softer, real. They would walk together through the meadows near the river, her hand in his. One afternoon, while they watched dragonflies skim the water, Peter said, "Lisa, I think I love you. Let's get married." Lisa smiled, but her gaze was careful. "You say that so easily, Peter. But we're young. There's still so much to learn about each other, about life. Maybe in a year or two." Peter's heart sank. "A year or two? That's forever." She laughed, and only if you rush it." That night, Peter lay awake, staring at the silver thread in the moonlight. Her words echoed in his mind, but impatience spoke louder. "Just a small pull. Just until next year." The thread shimmered in his fingers as he tugged. When Peter next opened his eyes, the air was warmer, the trees greener, and the world somehow different. He blinked, confused, and then realized his apprenticeship was over. He was standing outside the same old workshop, but now he was older, broader in the shoulders, a craftsman himself. His hands were calloused, his hair longer, and the town that once seemed vast now looked smaller somehow. And beside him stood Lisa. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair tied back with a ribbon. Her eyes carried the same calm warmth, but there was something new there too: trust, affection, and perhaps the faint beginning of love. He smiled, stunned. The thread had worked again. A whole year gone, just like that. They married that summer beneath a sky bright enough to burn away every shadow. The bells rang, laughter echoed through the valley, and Peter felt triumphant. Every obstacle he'd wanted to leap had vanished with a simple tug. Life, it seemed, had finally begun to move at his pace. But soon, even happiness began to feel slow. Peter's trade flourished. Orders poured in. His workshop grew busier. He and Lisa bought a small cottage on the edge of town, surrounded by roses and climbing vines. But when days stretched with routine measuring wood, mending roofs, counting coins, Peter's restlessness returned. He would glance at the silver ball tucked safely in a drawer, gleaming like an invitation. "Just a little faster," he'd whisper. "Just enough to skip the waiting." Lisa noticed. "Peter, you seem distracted lately," she said one evening as they dined by candlelight. He waved it off. "Just tired, love. The days feel too long sometimes." "Too long." She chuckled softly. "You used to say they were too short." He smiled back, but his eyes flicked toward the drawer. Later that night, when Lisa slept, he reached for it. The thread shimmered in the moonlight, whispering promises of ease. He tugged gently and the slow winter dissolved into a blooming spring. Lisa never knew. As months turned to years, Peter used the thread more often. When business was slow pull. When storms ruined their crops pull. When he and Lisa quarreled and the air grew cold pull. He told himself it was for the best, that skipping the rough edges meant preserving their joy. But with every pull, something precious went missing. The seasons blurred together. The laughter of friends faded into a hum, and the faces of loved ones grew hazy, like dreams half remembered. He had what he thought he wanted, a smooth life, free from struggle. But the smoothness was suffocating. Still, he could not stop. He pulled the thread through sickness and hardship, through the sleepless nights of their first child, through the noise of daily chores. He skipped through exhaustion, through tedium, through silence. The thread added silent, merciless, unstoppable. Years passed in a whirl. Peter's son John grew from a crying infant to a laughing boy to a tall, serious young man. Somewhere in between, Peter's hair turned faintly gray. He hardly noticed. He was too busy chasing the next better moment. Lisa tried to slow him, her voice soft but pleading. "Peter," she said one evening, "you rush through everything: your meals, your work, even our talks. You blink, and whole weeks are gone. Do you even see me anymore?" He frowned. "Of course I do. Don't say that. I mean truly see me," she insisted. "You've built a life so fast, you forgot to live in it. If you rush through pain, you rush through beauty too." Her words pricked something deep inside him, but he brushed it aside. "You worry too much. There's always time later." She shook her head slowly. "No, Peter. Time doesn't wait. It just moves with or without us. That night, as she slept beside him, Peter lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Her words buzzed like bees in his skull. He turned toward the small drawer, knowing the silver ball was waiting there. His pulse quickened. Just one more time, he thought. Just until the busy season passes. Then I'll slow down. He pulled, and the world leaped forward again. The next years passed in flashes. A new workshop. A second child lost in infancy. A tearful embrace at his mother's funeral. John's first day at school. Lisa's quiet eyes watching from the porch as Peter hurried out, late again, always late. Each moment should have held the weight of living. Instead, they flickered like scenes from a film sped too fast. Peter told himself he was happy. After all, wasn't he achieving everything faster than anyone else? His business thrived, his son excelled, his home was filled with warmth. But inside, a dull ache grew, a sense of having missed something vital, though he couldn't say what. Sometimes he caught his reflection in the workshop window, older, tired, gray at the temples. He'd blink, startled, wondering when those years had crept by. He would reach for the thread, tempted to rewind time, but it had no such mercy. It only moved one way. One summer afternoon, as golden light streamed through the open workshop door, Lisa came in carrying a basket of fresh bread. Her hair was streaked with silver now, her hands worn but graceful. "John will graduate next month," she said, smiling proudly. Peter nodded absently, sanding the edge of a table. "Already? Feels like he just started school." She looked at him quietly. "Yes, it must feel that way when you're never really here to see it happen." Her words struck deeper than she intended. Peter stopped, staring at the grain of the wood. "I'm here now," he muttered. "But your mind is always somewhere else," she said softly. "Always chasing the next thing." He wanted to argue, to say she was wrong, but deep down, he knew she wasn't. That night, Peter went for a walk through the fields behind their home. The air was thick with the scent of wildflowers. Crickets sang. Somewhere in the distance, a river whispered against its banks. He felt old for the first time, not in body, but in spirit. The world had sped past him, and he had no idea how. When did it all change? He wondered. When did time stop belonging to me? He thought of the silver thread waiting on his desk, coiled and silent. His stomach twisted. For years, it had obeyed his every wish, yet now it felt more like a curse than a gift. He told himself to stop using it. But the next morning, the old restlessness returned. He tugged again. The days rushed by, faster and faster. Lisa's hair turned white. John became a man, his voice deep and confident. The house grew quieter as laughter faded and footsteps slowed. And then one morning, Peter awoke to find his reflection staring back from the mirror, a stranger. His face was lined and weary, his hair nearly all gray. The realization hit like a wave. When did I grow old? He touched his cheek, his jaw, the fine lines around his eyes. The man looking back was no longer the boy who once fidgeted in class, dreaming of freedom. He was a man who had skipped the very thing he longed for, life itself. That morning, Lisa found him sitting on the porch, surrounded by photo albums. She stopped in the doorway, her heart aching at the sight. "What are you doing with all these pictures?" she asked gently. Peter didn't look up, just looking. "I barely remember these moments, Lisa. Our wedding, John's first steps. That trip to the lake. They're all here, but I can't feel them. It's like I was never really there." Lisa knelt beside him, resting her hand on his. "We all have regrets, Peter. But you can still be here now. That's what matters." He turned toward, her eyes filled with guilt. "I don't deserve your kindness. I wasted so much time." She smiled faintly. "You didn't waste it. You just hurried through it. And maybe that's something we can change together." He opened his mouth to reply, but no words came. He only nodded, the weight of years pressing down on him. That night, Peter couldn't sleep. The clock ticked like a heartbeat in the dark. Lisa's breathing was steady beside him, peaceful. He envied that peace. Finally, he rose, slipped on his coat, and stepped outside. The moon hung high above the fields, casting silver light over the path that led to the forest. The same forest where, long ago, he'd met the woman who gave him the thread. Something inside him whispered that he would find her there again. The air grew colder as he walked. The forest seemed older now, its trees towering, its shadows deeper, but the path felt familiar beneath his feet, as if waiting for him all these years. When he reached the clearing, the wind fell silent. The world held its breath. He sank to his knees and pulled the silver ball from his pocket. The thread was nearly gone, a tiny length left wound around the core. It pulsed faintly with light. "Please," Peter whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't want this anymore." The forest stirred. From the shadows stepped the woman, her eyes the same mix of warmth and warning. "Peter," she said softly. "It has been many years." He bowed his head. "Too many. I want to give it back. I can't live like this. I missed everything, the laughter, the tears, the love. I ran from pain and lost joy along the way." The woman's expression was neither pity nor anger, only quiet understanding. "My gift gave you what you thought you wanted," she said, "but not what you needed." Peter nodded, tears blurring his vision. "Please, I want to live again. Truly live. Even if it hurts." She reached out and placed a hand upon his shoulder. "Many chase time as though it were gold. But time is not something to own, Peter, it is something to walk through, step by step. Only in walking it do you find meaning." Her words struck deep into the hollow space of his heart. He had spent a lifetime running and now he was ready to walk. The clearing glowed faintly in the moonlight. Peter knelt there, trembling, clutching what little remained of the silver thread. His voice, rough from age and sorrow, barely carried through the night air. "I wasted everything," he whispered. "I thought I was escaping pain, but I escaped life." The woman stepped closer, her presence filling the silence like music half remembered. "Every heart must learn this truth," she said gently. "Joy and sorrow are woven together. To pull away one is to unravel the other." Peter looked up at her, his eyes wet. "Then help me fix it. I don't want to rush anymore. I want to feel every heartbeat, every laugh, every tear. Please, let me live again." The woman's expression softened. "Are you certain? Once the choice is made, there is no returning to this path." "Yes," he said, his voice steady for the first time in years. "I want to live my life over, but this time, without the magic. I'll walk through every storm, every waiting hour. I'll stay awake in every precious moment." The woman smiled a smile, both sad and radiant. "Then your wish shall be granted." She reached out and took the silver ball from his trembling hands. The thread shimmered, curling upward like smoke before vanishing into the night air. The forest began to glow, the trees breathing with soft light, and the air hummed with quiet energy. Peter felt the world shift. His heartbeat slowed, then quickened, then slowed again as though time itself was catching its breath. "Goodbye, Peter," the woman whispered. "Live well this time. Let patience be your compass." A great flash of white filled the clearing. Peter shut his eyes against it, and when he opened them, the world had changed. The second beginning. "Peter, wake up, you'll be late for school again." The voice startled him. It was bright, young, familiar like a melody from childhood. His eyes flew open, and sunlight spilled across the room. He blinked in disbelief. The wallpaper blew and faded. The wooden dresser, the smell of toast drifting from the kitchen, and his mother young again, smiling down at him, her eyes twinkling with playful scolding. "Mom." His voice cracked. "Yes, silly boy," she laughed. "Who else would it be? Now get up before you miss breakfast." Peter sat up, heart pounding. His hands small again, the world sharp, vivid, alive. He felt the warmth of the blanket, the creak of the floorboards, the morning breeze slipping through the window. Every sensation hit him like a gift he'd forgotten to unwrap. He stumbled out of bed, still dazed. "Mom." He paused, the words catching in his throat. "I love you." She blinked, surprised. "Well, that's not something I hear every morning." "I mean it," he said earnestly. "Thank you for everything." Her smile softened. "Oh, you're a strange one today. Now hurry up. Lisa's waiting downstairs." "Lisa?" He froze. Could it be? He dressed quickly, barely able to contain his grin, and bounded down the stairs 2 at a time. There she was, young, laughing, with ribbons in her hair, and her satchel slung over one shoulder. She turned when she saw him. "You're late again, Peter," she teased. "We'll miss the bell. Then we'll walk faster," he said, eyes bright. As they stepped outside, sunlight spilled across the fields, dew still clinging to the grass. The air smelled of wet earth and blossoms. Peter took a deep breath, the world crisp and endless around him. Lisa looked at him curiously. "Why are you smiling like that?" "Because I finally understand," he said softly. "Understand what? That every minute is worth keeping." She tilted her head, amused. "You're so strange today." He laughed. "Maybe, but I think it's a good kind of strange. Learning to stay." From that day on, Peter lived differently. At school, he still fidgeted sometimes, still dreamed of adventures, but he began to notice the small things he had once ignored. The warmth of sunlight on the desk, the sound of chalk scratching across the board, the laughter of classmates echoing in the hall. When he felt the urge to hurry, he would close his eyes and remind himself, "This moment will never return. Don't waste it." And as the years unfolded, he discovered something miraculous. Even the dullest days held quiet treasures. The long walks home in the rain, the smell of his mother's cooking, the chatter of friends as they planned impossible dreams. Each moment shimmered with life, no longer something to rush through but something to feel. When he grew older and began his apprenticeship again, the work no longer bored him. Each cut of wood, each curl of sawdust, each finished piece brought satisfaction. He began to take pride not just in what he made, but in how long it took him to make it. Time, he realized, was not a chain, it was a brushstroke, painting meaning into everything he touched. Lisa often visited his workshop, watching him with quiet affection. One afternoon, as sunlight slanted through the windows, Peter paused, smiling at her. "What?" she asked, laughing. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Because I'm lucky," he said. "Because you're here, right now." She shook her head. "You say the oddest things." "Maybe," he said, still smiling, "but I used to wish time away. Now I wish it would slow down." The gift of presence. Years passed, not in blurs, but in gentle turns. Peter and Lisa married again beneath the same sky, but this time he remembered every heartbeat, every laugh, every tear. He noticed the way the light fell on her veil, how the scent of roses mingled with the sound of distant bells. They built a small home together on the edge of the forest. Peter took his time with every beam, every window, every nail. Lisa often teased him, saying, "At this rate, we'll move in when we're old." He would laugh and reply, "Then we'll enjoy every nail I hammered." When storms came, they sat by the fire, telling stories. When the fields bloomed, they worked side by side, planting seeds and dreaming of their future. He no longer pulled threads. He wove them. Their first child was born in spring, a son, just as before. But this time, Peter stayed awake through every sleepless night. He held his baby close, memorizing every breath, every cry, every smile. He felt the weight of time not as a burden, but as a blessing. There were still hard days, days of sickness, of loss, of exhaustion, but Peter faced them fully. He learned that sorrow, when faced with patience, deepened joy. Pain gave meaning to peace. One night, after a long day's work, he sat beside Lisa under a canopy of stars. The world was still, except for the whisper of crickets. "Do you ever wish we could hurry things up?" Lisa asked quietly. He smiled, shaking his head. "No. I used to think happiness lived in the future. Now I know it lives right here." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Then promise me we'll always live this way." He took her hand and whispered, "One moment at a time." Full circle the years moved gently, carrying them through the chapters of their lives. Peter grew older again, but this time, he saw it happen. He watched his son take his first steps, then his first fall, then his first triumph. He felt pride swell in his chest, not because time had passed, but because he had been there for every heartbeat of it. When his son went away to learn his own trade, Peter felt the ache of distance, but also gratitude. "Go," he told him. "Live. And don't rush it." Lisa smiled softly beside him. "You sound like an old man of wisdom." "Maybe just an old man who finally learned to listen," he said with a wink. The seasons turned once more. Gray crept into Peter's hair, lines into his hands, but instead of dread, he felt peace. Every wrinkle was a record of laughter, every ache a reminder that he had lived fully. He still walked through the forest sometimes, though slower now. The trees stood taller, their branches whispering the same song they had sung the day he first met the mysterious woman. He would pause in the clearing, breathing the cool air, and whisper, "Thank you." Sometimes, when the wind rustled the leaves just so, he thought he heard a voice answer, soft, almost tender, "You learned well. Peter, time belongs to those who live it." The last sunrise. One morning, long after his hair had turned silver, Peter awoke before dawn. The world was wrapped in quiet. Lisa slept peacefully beside him, her face serene. He rose, walked outside, and sat on the porch, watching the horizon. The sky slowly brightened, the first light spilling over the hills. Every sunrise, he thought, was a promise kept, a reminder that patience brings beauty in its own time. As the sun rose higher, he closed his eyes and smiled. He thought of his mother, of the boy who couldn't wait, of the woman in the forest, of every moment he had finally learned to cherish. Lisa's voice broke the silence behind him. You're up early, she said, stepping out and wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. I didn't want to miss it, he replied softly. Miss what? This sunrise. Everyone is different. She smiled and sat beside him. They watched in silence as the light filled the valley. After a while, Lisa took his hand. Do you think we'll always be this happy if we keep living this way? Yes, he said, squeezing her fingers gently. Because happiness isn't somewhere we're going. It's right here between one heartbeat and the next. The wind stirred, carrying the scent of morning dew. Birds began to sing. Peter felt the world breathing with him, slow, alive, patient, and as the day unfolded, he understood, truly and completely, the gift he'd been given, not the power to control time, but the wisdom to walk with it. Epilogue, the lesson of the thread. Peter's story became one whispered through generations, a tale of a boy who learned that life's beauty is not found in its speed, but in its stillness. For time, like a thread, is not meant to be pulled. It is meant to be woven patiently, lovingly into a tapestry, rich with color and meaning. And those who learn to weave rather than rush, find that even the smallest moments can shine brighter than a lifetime of hurry. Moral: happiness does not dwell in tomorrow, it breathes in today. Every hour, every breath, every heartbeat is a gift. Live it. Don't pull the thread.